Hello, my name is Yazin Abdin, Managing Partner of Abdin Law, an immigration law firm. Today I have attorney Robert Kleinfeldt with me, who will be discussing bankruptcy matters. Our objective is to touch on as many of the questions that you guys have as possible and hopefully be able to answer most of them so that you can walk away feeling comfortable and confident whether or not you have a case or if this is something you would like to pursue. Attorney Robert, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm attorney Robert Kleinfeldt. My office is downtown. I am the only member of my sole practitioner firm, and I specialize in bankruptcy in addition to commercial litigation and debt-related issues.
And Robert, what's your contact info? If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do so?
Well, certainly you can email me at robert@Kleinfeldt Law, that's KLEINFELDT law.com, or you can give my office a call at 407-505-7597.
Awesome. So Robert, bankruptcy, big topic, I think hot topic right now with everything going on in the world, right? We're dealing with a pandemic. Lots of businesses were forced to shut down via government mandate. And so presumably we're going to have an influx in bankruptcy here in the next few months. So there's two ways to look at it, is my understanding. There's a consumer standpoint and a business standpoint. So we'll probably touch on both of those. But what's the general idea? What should someone know about bankruptcy before getting started? What is bankruptcy?
Bankruptcy effectively is a mechanism used by the courts to alleviate, I guess that's the right word, alleviate certain types of debt from an individual so that they are allowed a fresh start moving forward into the future. Some debt historically it started with there was a debtor's prison at one point in both England and the United States. To my knowledge, the United States, but it started in England. The judicial system didn't think it was fair in some respect that people were jailed jailed next to hardened criminals for simply owing a financial obligation to another entity or party. So bankruptcy sort of started as a mechanism to relieve that burden from individuals. I believe it started only with individuals. And essentially what it does is it allows an individual or a business, depending on the chapter that's filed, to go in and either reorganize their debt or liquidate their debt in a Chapter 11, Chapter 7, or Chapter 13. And there are other chapters as well, but they pertain mostly to Chapter 12, I believe, is for farmers and stuff like that. But that's essentially how it started, and it's the financial burden that debt causes people and the stress that it causes people and even businesses can be utterly overwhelming at times. And what bankruptcy can do is it can provide that individual with, eliminating creditor phone calls, eliminating the constant harassment from collectors or collection agencies, and really allow the individual or business to take a step back, breathe, figuratively speaking, and sort of try to get either their personal finances or the business finances in order.
So my next question to you, Attorney Robert, is who would be a good candidate from the consumer standpoint and also from a business owner standpoint? Who's a good candidate for bankruptcy?
Well, I hesitate initially with that definition of a good candidate. Bankruptcy really isn't a practice of law that I feel one really qualifies for in terms of candidacy as much as it's a product of their situation. It can depend on it all depends on their level of income and their disposable income, and what they're able to pay and provide and pay for monthly, with respect to which chapter they're able to file. For example, if an individual were to file a Chapter 7, in order to qualify for a Chapter 7, there's something called a means test that someone has to pass. A means test is essentially a calculation of what the debtor's income from most sources and the debtor's monthly expenses. If they're beneath a certain mark, then the debtor can qualify for a Chapter 7 and they can have their assets liquidated. If they don't qualify for that mark, then they're forced into a Chapter 13.
Okay. And what's a Chapter 13 bankruptcy?
Chapter 13 bankruptcy is basically a reorganization. That's a better way of putting it, and I think that's actually the official definition. It's a reorganization of debts. That's primarily where I practice in bankruptcy. It's typically, I guess the best way to put it is it's typically associated with those individuals who are in foreclosure want to save their house, but are too far behind in arrears that they can't feasibly do that.
Mm-hmm.
So they file Chapter 13, and if they have homestead protection on the home, or even if it's a rental home, they can still generally save it. And they basically can either try to modify their mortgage through a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, or they can catch up on their arrears through the Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan, which is generally 3 to 5 years, and has been extended by COVID in certain circumstances up to 7 years.
Interesting. Very good. And some of the pros and cons, can you share with us? Obviously, the big one is your credit score, right? Everybody knows that. You file bankruptcy, your credit score is going to take a hit. But it can't just all be bad. There has to be some pros as well. So can you share with us, based on your years of experience, what some of the positives and some of the negatives are of filing different bankruptcies?
Well, certainly, the negative is that you're going to have a lot of oversight with respect to your finances. There's a trustee and a U.S. trustee that are assigned to your case as soon as you file. They pore over your finances, your financial transactions, and your transfers. In certain circumstances, as in a Chapter 7, a trustee can exercise what's called a clawback provision and pull back a transfer that you've made previously, and if it's deemed fraudulent, and bring it back to the state so that it can be liquidated by the trustee for the bankruptcy estate to pay creditors. So there's a lot of financial oversight that goes into a bankruptcy, and naturally so. If you have people that are trying to liquidate their debts or reorganize their debts, that's a lot of money that, in some circumstances, these are individual creditors. It's not like a giant bank necessarily all the time. It's not a Visa or a MasterCard or a giant bank or anything like that. It's an individual creditor, and they lent somebody $35,000. Now, if your claim isn't secured through a Chapter 13, then it can be liquidated if the client or if the bankruptcy petitioner actually completes their plan. So it can hurt a lot of people. It really can, and it's an unfortunate situation that no one really likes to find themselves in. And very few people that I've found in my experience use that as a mechanism to delay or use it in a fraudulent way to try to avoid paying their obligations.
Mm-hmm.
But most of them that I've encountered do so simply just to get out of the situation that they're in and try to move forward.
Oh, awesome. And for the viewers, are there any prophylactic measures that can be taken to avoid bankruptcy? Do you have any suggestions of certain things people can do to prepare for and hopefully avoid bankruptcy?
Certainly, there are always the measures of trying to work with your creditors in anticipation of not being able to afford your monthly payments at a certain point in time.
Mm-hmm.
The success rate of that depends obviously on what is owed, the amount that's owed, I should say, and the type of obligation that it is. Sometimes you can work with a creditor, sometimes a creditor will work with you. If there have been quite a few defaults or an extended period of time of defaulting, then generally I've found that creditors, at least secured ones, are less likely to work with a would-be debtor, and they will simply sometimes allow them to go into bankruptcy just so that they can do what they need to do through the bankruptcy court, and there's oversight. And the oversight can be beneficial both to the creditor and the debtor, because the court is overseeing the rules that are used and the mechanisms that are used to try and collect on this debt. So it can be beneficial to both creditors and debtors in that respect. But as a prophylactic measure, financial budgeting is paramount in trying to be able to understand what your financial, your economic feasibility is going to be with respect to certain payments and certain obligations, the type of vehicle you buy. And understanding that in the United States can be very difficult at times because we're such a consumer-driven economy that people are oftentimes, it's sort of one of those dynamics where people are you're constantly shown a stream of things that you need to buy, things that you need to do, and it's difficult for people to be socially accepted in instances where they don't have the same things as others who might be in a better position financially. So it can force them into that situation. So
yeah, we're definitely a consumer society,
Exactly.
and with advertising and consumption and a new phone coming out every other week,
right.
So it definitely makes sense. I know there's certain debts that don't get wiped away when you file bankruptcy. Can you share with us what some of those are?
Certainly, there are student loans. Up to this point, there is a new program in the Middle District of Florida, relatively new, where you can enter sort of almost like a mortgage modification situation, where you can sort of modify your original obligation,
Mm-hmm.
but you can do that with a student loan. And certainly in the Orlando division, you can do that if you fulfilled certain requirements. Alimony and child support are never gotten rid of, are unable to get rid of them in layman's terms in a bankruptcy. Other obligations, any secured debt, you can't simply wash your hands of and stay with.
Mhm.
For example, an automobile, secured debt really is anything that can be repossessed if you don't pay for it. A house, a car, certain fixtures on your home, sometimes like solar panel systems. I mean, that's a more rare one, but it can happen. Those debts don't simply go away by filing bankruptcy unless you pay for them while you're in bankruptcy. For example, 13, if you want to stay in your house, you have to pay for it. If you want to stay in your vehicle or with that vehicle, you need to pay for them. As long as you can pay for them, you can generally stay with them.
That makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, a funny question I received from a viewer about gift cards.
Mhm.
So, with the pandemic, lots of businesses have either have filed bankruptcy or are in the process, or they will soon. So, as a consumer, if I just got a $100 gift card last Christmas to, let's say, Hertz, who I believe has already filed bankruptcy, what's my recourse? Am I out $100?
The long story, or the short story is generally yes. Generally yes. I don't know of too many cases where, actually I don't know of any case where I've ever seen where a gift card has been honored while the company that is supposed to be backing the gift card or honoring that gift card is in some sort of reorganization or bankruptcy proceeding. I had a client a few years ago that had a $1,000 gift card to a golf outlet in South Florida that filed Chapter 11, and there was really nothing they could do. It was a gift that he got, so he didn't actually come out of his pocket for that. But
Right.
I haven't seen, at least not in my experience, have I seen a situation where a gift card or somebody receives any money back from the trustee's office for the gift card that they purchased or received.
Let me ask you this: does it make a difference if the company reorganizes versus dissolves completely? So, depending on the chapter of bankruptcy filed, does that make a difference? So, if a company reorganizes and resumes business. Now, is that gift card still valid, or because of the fact that they filed bankruptcy, it's automatically dead?
I mean, if they're still in bankruptcy, again, in my experience, I've never seen a situation where the gift card has been mandated by a court to be honored, where the court, orders a company to honor gift cards. If a company comes out of bankruptcy, they may choose to continue honoring gift cards, or if they remain open throughout the pendency of their bankruptcy and just simply trying to reorganize but haven't closed their doors, so to speak. I mean, I believe they're still, entirely permitted to honor gift cards.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not exactly certain with respect to those. I don't have too much experience with gift cards because, generally as soon as people get them, they spend them pretty quickly. But
so the gist, the takeaway from this: if you have a gift card, go ahead and use it. Especially if you know a company is going to possibly file bankruptcy, or if you have any suspicions about a business, go ahead and use those gift cards as soon as possible, so you do not find yourself in this unfortunate situation. Attorney Robert, I know you're very busy. I don't want to take up too much of your time. One more question for you.
Sure.
In our previous discussion, you had shared with me that there is a website where people can do weekly free credit checks. Typically, that's not the case, right? Pre-COVID, there was no free credit checks. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, the Federal Trade Commission passed or implemented some sort of rule where on May, I believe it was May 18th, that you're entitled to free credit checks from the three main credit reporting companies, Equifax, TransUnion, and the third one escapes me right now. But prior to that, you were entitled to not entitled. You could get a free credit report through Credit Karma and other different companies, but generally there were some strings attached, and it certainly wasn't weekly. So it was more of a monthly thing or a one-time a year thing prior to this.
And what's the benefit of these free credit reports? Is this something we should be utilizing and taking advantage of, or is it kind of just whatever?
Oh, I think it's absolutely necessary to take advantage of it. It's something that they were previously charging for, so one, there's already a benefit there. Second, it allows you to understand what position you're in financially with respect to, your credit score, what you're able to purchase, how you should be able to budget. Lastly, I mean, if there are any errors on your credit reports, which sometimes manifest, you'll be able to catch them much quicker if you're downloading your credit reports weekly or looking at them weekly and saying, okay, this is a weird charge. I didn't do that. So, I mean, there are many, many benefits to it, and I would certainly highly recommend taking advantage of that program if you can.
And you said that's the Federal Trade Commission website?
That's true. That's correct.
Awesome. Attorney Robert, thank you so much for your time. One more time, if you don't mind, please share your contact information with the viewers so that if somebody has any questions, they can reach out to you directly.
Certainly. With any questions, my name again was Robert Kleinfeldt. My email was robert@kleinfeldtlaw.com, and my phone number is 407-505-7597. You can either call or text with your questions, and I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you again to our viewers. We appreciate all of you. I hope that this video is beneficial and that you are able to learn something from it. If you did enjoy it, please like it and share with your friends. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.